What's going on, everybody? It is time for the Stokastic NFL Deeper Dive Thursday Night Football, and it's an exciting thing for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's actually a decent Thursday Night Football game. Dolphins and Bengals. Not always do we get a good Thursday Night Football game. In addition, we're about 20 subscribers away from 80,000. That would be pretty cool. So if you guys could do us a favor, let's try to get to 80K during this show. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We do appreciate that a whole bunch, and it'll be good times once you get to 80,000 around here. Also, I'm joined here by Neil Orfield. Neil, who's absolutely crushed some of the Showdown slates historically, but also this year. When was it? You had a big win? What was it, 2 weeks ago? So I know it's been
exactly 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. 2 weeks ago. Exactly, because it was a Thursday. 2 weeks ago, since Neil has had a big cash in Showdown. So he's due. 2 weeks is a cold streak as far as Neil is concerned. But we got a good one here today. Neil, who's winning the game, first of all, and how do you feel about this contest?
I think the Bengals are going to win the game. I think it's a little bit of a letdown spot potentially for Miami after winning against the Bills. I think that they're likely to be in kind of a letdown spot, and it's a home game for the Bengals. So I've got the Bengals in the game. I should clarify, 2 weeks is not a cold spell for me in the Showdown contest, especially if you're playing the volatile way that we recommend to play, where you're trying to get unique. You're not going to win all that often. It's all about winning more when you do win. But I definitely lose a lot more frequently than I win, even if Showdown is one of my specialties. It's not something that I win very frequently.
Yeah, and I mean, it's one of those things also, if you look at like DraftKings, for instance, I mean, the Millie Maker contest they pay out, it's nearly 50% of the prize pool goes to first place. If you're playing 150 lineups, you kind of have to win to profit on any individual slate just because so much of the prize pool goes to first place. So yeah, if you're being contrarian, you're being volatile, you really need to make those individual wins count, which, it's been a Twitter debate about going on for the last week or so. But yeah, you and I do tend to play these pretty contrarian. I'm going to be playing a little bit heavier on FanDuel today. Neil, I know you're usually a little heavier on DK, if I'm not mistaken, for the Showdown slates.
Yeah, I mean, I typically 150 max on both sites. The main slate, FanDuel, is just less expensive to enter. So I'm heavier in terms of the money that I put in, but I'm typically playing about the same volume on both.
Yeah, I think that does make sense. And it's true because you got the contests on FanDuel. There's $9, there's the $3, the $4.44, and then DK does have a little more diverse contest selection. And then the main contest being a little bit higher of a buy-in. One other thing I'll mention as we come in, we are sponsored by No House Advantage today. If you guys have not signed up in No House Advantage, they now have a $50 deposit bonus match. So if you haven't signed up in No House Advantage, you can click on the link below and you will get $50 as deposit match, the first deposit you make there. And this is just a different way to play daily fantasy sports. It's prop-based DFS contest. You're building player prop cards, and then you're labeling them with a confidence interval. So a 7-point prop, a 6-point prop, and then how many points your lineup scores depends on what confidence intervals you give to the individual props. And we have it as easy as it could possibly be for you to enter lineups. If you go over to Stokastic, we have projections for No House Advantage, and we have a lineup optimizer tool that just gives you a bunch of lineups, and you can upload them directly into No House Advantage. So if you haven't taken advantage of that yet, go ahead and click on the link below to join NHA. Neil, let's start talking about today's game, and we are going to talk first about the Miami Dolphins because I just checked, and that's the team that I wrote first in the run sheet here. So the Dolphins, when we're talking about Tua, how concerned are you about the injury? Because it didn't look great on Sunday. I was stunned that he came back into the game, and then kind of equally stunned that he ended up playing in today's game, or at least right now expected to play, barring any kind of setbacks. But for now, assuming that he's going to be in. So when it comes to Tua, how much should we be handicapping him or assuming that he's less than 100%?
I think in the lineups that I'm playing Tua, I guess I should answer more overall. I'm not handicapping Tua. I mean, it was a concussion, right? They didn't call it a concussion, but it was a concussion. It's the kind of thing that as long as he doesn't get hit in the head again, we can assume that he is good to go, right? So I think that I'm not handicapping Tua. If you want to, in a 150 set, get a little bit weird, make a few lineups where you assume that Tua is not 100% good to go, and maybe he does get hit in the head again. Maybe he's a little bit vulnerable. Then you could play a couple Teddy lineups, I guess. But the way I'm playing it tonight, I'm approaching it as though Tua is 100%. Are you playing it any differently?
It's just so hard to say. And I think it's going to seem obvious after the fact because it's one of those situations where the narrative, like, we don't know. I don't have any intel on Tua. You don't need, by the way, we actually just got official word as we were talking about it officially. Tua back/ankle will play today. And to your point about the concussion, the Dolphins getting investigated by the NFL. Did you see that the Dolphins official team Twitter account put out that it was a head injury, and then
Yeah.
they deleted the tweet and afterwards like, what? Why did you think it
Oh
was a
no,
head
no,
injury?
I did not see that. No.
Yeah, they did. The official team Twitter account put out that Tua was being evaluated for a head injury, and then afterwards they're like, no, that wasn't a head injury; it was a back injury. So that was something that partially led to the investigation as well. But that aside, he has officially been ruled in. We should mention as we're talking about this. But when it comes to Tua, I don't know, right? Like, and I don't know how anybody could be all that confident. I know what the narratives are here. It's a short week. He was a little banged up, but football players are pretty frequently banged up for Thursday night football games. I don't know that he's going to be more compromised than, say, like Joe Burrow or any other player in the game. He could be, but he also might not be. So ultimately, I just have to lean on what our projections say. And right now, we do have him as being positively leveraged on DraftKings. It looks like he's going a little bit under-owned on FanDuel. That's also the same case. We have him positively leveraged in our top stacks tool on both of them. And I also think there could be a bias that comes into play where if enough people, I'm going to keep an eye on chat. If people are just going to say like Tua's damaged goods or busted or whatever, then that's going to make me want to play Tua even more because it's going to make me think that it's going to drive down his ownership.
Yeah, I mean that exactly right. If the sentiment is down on Tua, that's going to make us like him a little bit better because my assumption is, with a concussion, he's unlikely to suffer an in-game injury again because it's unlikely that they're going to hit him in the head, right? If they hit him in the head, that's a big penalty. If you hit the quarterback in the head, so I don't think it's something that they're actively going to be trying to do in this game. So I'm working under the assumption that he is a full go. I'm not going to have him in 100% of my lineups anyway. I don't think this is the kind of week where anybody is going to make it into all of my lineups. So even if he's not 100%, I'll have some lineups without Tua. But I think that the approach I'm taking in general is I'm going to play as though he's healthy. I'm going to hope that other people assume that he's not 100% and don't want to play him and gain a little bit of leverage there.
And I have a feeling that's going to be the case. And like I said, as is, we already have him going a little bit under owned. So he's somebody I'd be more apt to get overweight to the field to. But I think some of the narrative here could drive down that ownership once we actually get to lock. We've got a question here. This is just a general overall lineup construction question for Showdown. And I think it's a good one. This is from Lucky in our premium Discord channel. He's asking us, would you limit to one running back per team tonight, or would you do any kind of negative boost? Do you set any kind of rules like that in Fantasy Cruncher when you're making your lineups for Showdown?
No, so I actually like having two running backs from the same team at times. It's a little bit weird today with Mixon and then with Samaje Perine being priced up so much. I guess if you wanted to do it on a day like today, you could, but because so much of the field is going to be thinking like that, like I can't play both of these guys on the same roster. I'm not going to shy away from him. I'm going to embrace the possibility that, Samaje Perine and Joe Mixon both get in for touchdowns. It is a little bit tougher because of Samaje Perine's price tag, because he would probably need more than just a solo touchdown and not anything else to be optimal. So it is, I think it's in consideration today. It's not something that I'm doing. I actually used to in Fantasy Cruncher go in, and if I had a running back in the captain spot, I would give boosts to every other running back, including running backs from the same team, in part because I knew the field really didn't want to do that. And in part because, it's a game script where they're likely to be running the ball a lot. And I would do the same for kickers and defense. So I guess the most general answer for me is I'm not going to be doing that. I don't think that it's necessarily wrong to do it, particularly on the Cincinnati side with both of the running backs being priced up. I don't think I would do it. I wouldn't recommend it for the Miami side just because Mostert and Edmonds are both relatively cheap. So I think I'd be more likely to do it with the Bengals side.
And then I want to ask you about Mostert and Edmonds because it's been a weird situation at running back for them. And I know you and I did a little bit of a deep dive on the running back situation for the Dolphins last week when we were talking about the main slate. I ended up on the right side of the fantasy points of Chase Edmonds last week, but I don't think I was right. Like I think I was very wrong. I just got lucky that he scored touchdowns last weekend and that he wasn't being played. But if you look at the overall snap share, each progressive week of the season, Edmonds has played less and less snaps, and Mostert has played more and more snaps. So how are you going to handle this running back situation in large field tournaments? Do you have a preference here? Because with these two being, $6,200 for Edmonds on DK, Mostert being $4,400, then over on FanDuel, we also have Mostert being $2,500 less expensive. I feel like I have to lean towards Mostert for the salary savings and just the fact that his snaps have been trending up while Edmonds have been trending down.
Yeah, so I hear was so I don't want to overreact to what happened last week because we don't really know. We still have a very small sample size. We don't know exactly what they're trying to do. The Bengals have sort of a tough rush defense, so I'm not going to be going out of my way to go overboard on either of these guys. But really, for me, it's going to come down to ownership. I'm going to let ownership dictate what I do here. Raheem Mostert coming in at 3.6% in the captain spot, 20% in the utility spot. That seems reasonable to me. I think I would like to be maybe above the field on both of those for Raheem Mostert. But Chase Edmonds coming in even lower owned than Mostert, which I guess makes sense based on what we saw last week. We did see Mostert get a little bit more of the share of the backfield last week than Edmonds. Although, as you say, Edmonds scored 2 touchdowns. I was sort of surprised to see that Edmonds doesn't have higher projected ownership here, just because he did have those 2 touchdowns last week that kind of skewed things for him. But we're projecting Edmonds for 3% ownership in the captain spot, 18.4% ownership in the utility spot. That actually looks a little bit over owned according to the boom bust tool. But for me, because of the way I play, where I'm using a salary cap, trying to get different, I'm probably going to be above the field on Chase Edmonds just because of the price tag and because he's one of those plays that he comes in at a low salary, but I still think has that upside to have a spike week. So I'm probably going to be at least close to the field. Maybe I would expect to be above the field on Chase Edmonds, but I guess we'll have to see how things break down when I actually make my lineups.
Yeah, and just to read off, I'm pulling up the snapshot. I know I had it in front of me before. Here we go. All right. So Chase Edmonds, week by week. Week 1, 63% of the snaps. Week 2, 56%. Week 3, 44%. And then conversely with Raheem Mostert, 42% of the snaps in week 1, 49% in week 2, 56% in week 3. So that's just the way the trend's been going for this team right now. And by the way, also target share slowly trending down for Edmonds and then trending up for Mostert. 10% target share last week for Mostert, 5% for Edmonds. So similar trends there in terms of playing time target share. It looks like Mostert is the number 1 running back for the team, although not like a solid number 1 because it's still very much a timeshare, but a slight lean towards Mostert right now, who's also cheaper. So all things considered, he is going to be my preferred option at running back when it comes to the Dolphins. But let's talk about the wide receivers next, because there are a bunch of wide receivers in this game to talk about. And the 2 big guns on the Miami Dolphins are Tyreek Hill, and then we've also got Jalen Waddle. Waddle a little bit more banged up coming into this week, at least per the injury report. There seemed to be some doubt whether he was going to play. He is now expected to be active for tonight, though. So what do you make of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? How are you handling the star wide receivers from Miami?
Yeah, so I'm going to be playing them. They're both very very good receivers. I'm trying to pull up. For some reason I cannot find their routes run information. I'm not. I don't know what I'm doing wrong here. But yeah, I mean it's going to come down to ownership for me once again. If the field is afraid of Jalen Waddle's injury, then that just makes me like Waddle a little bit more. My assumption is if Waddle plays, he's a full go. He looks like he is actually getting a fair amount of ownership. That's what we're projecting for him. He's 10,200, so a little bit expensive, but I'm still probably going to have a good amount of Jalen Waddle. He doesn't project extremely well where he makes it into most of my lineups naturally, just because we've got the quarterbacks who project better for lower salaries. But Jalen Waddle obviously has that spike potential any given week. So we've got a projected 7.7% ownership in the captain spot, 32.4% ownership in the utility spot. Both of those are a little bit over owned, but I don't want to be below half the field on Jalen Waddle. I don't think. I think I'm still going to try to be pretty close to those numbers. I'll probably be a little bit under the field, but I am going to want to be playing some Jalen Waddle because he just has a ton of upside. And then Tyreek Hill is just, any given week, he has the potential for a huge spike week. He's coming in at 10.2% ownership in the captain spot, 38% ownership in the utility spot. Again, both of those are some negative leverage. Neither of these receivers project as well as the quarterbacks in the game, and the quarterbacks are less expensive. So naturally I'll get a lot of the quarterbacks if I don't adjust things a little bit, but I think that I am going to be trying to get a little bit more of these guys than what I get naturally. So I'm going to be probably a little bit under the field on both, but I think they're both, great plays.
All right, we've got a couple super chats to hit on. And the first one, Teddy Wayman, you asked over under 7 for the fantasy score for Mostert. What is the scoring? Because that makes a massive difference here. We're talking about FanDuel, we're talking about DraftKings. I'm going to assume 7 is for FanDuel because I'm thinking you're probably looking at a prize picks prop. If I had to guess, I'm also just guessing. So Teddy, if I'm incorrect, then throw a message into just the YouTube chat to let me know otherwise. But over under 7 fantasy points. Let's see, where do we have
We've got him above that on DraftKings. We have him at nearly 9 fantasy points on DraftKings. So that's full PPR. Half PPR, my assumption would be it's, point and a half lower. I don't know exactly where that would be for Mostert.
Yeah. So, Teddy, throw into the chat whether it is DraftKings or FanDuel. Actually, you know what? I'm looking at our project. We have them over on both of them. So, not like crazy highly over, but FanDuel, we do have them at 7.8. So, yeah, I'm going to say that it's the over there. It's a stronger over if this is DraftKings scoring, a little bit softer of an over if it's FanDuel scoring. The next super chat we have here is from Sam Pierce. He's asking, are you worried about added emotion with Apple? Afraid he may do something stupid and get kicked out. So I'm assuming you're talking about Tyreek Hill and the little bit of the rivalry he has going with Eli. I can't put any stock into this in terms of could he get kicked out? I mean, maybe potentially, but it's not something that I would put any stock into. It's like a 1% outcome.
Yeah, I'm same boat. I'm not concerned about the emotion for Tyreek Hill. My bigger concern is this all misdirection? Like, are they talking all this shit because they're going to want to throw it to Jalen Waddle, get the defense all riled up, get them all over Tyreek Hill, and then throw it somewhere else? But it's not a big enough concern for me that I'm factoring it in.
Yeah, and I mean the other thing too is it's another one of these things we're talking about Tua before in terms of narratives. So much of this is easy to tell the story after the game starts. It's a lot harder before the game. Like, is this going to be a positive for Tyreek Hill? Is it going to be a negative? You can make a case either way before the game ends, and then the narrative will write itself afterwards. Like, oh, he was too wound up to play against Eli Apple and he struggled, or it goes the other way. And it's like, oh, he was so motivated to play well again. At the end of the day, they're playing a sport. They're playing football. Tyreek Hill is really good. He's a much better wide receiver than Eli Apple is as a cornerback. So in general, my expectation would be Tyreek Hill plays well because that's kind of what Tyreek Hill typically does.
Yeah, that would be my expectation as well, especially because he is just a better player than Eli Apple. So, yeah, I'm not concerned at all. If anything, I like it better that they're talking all this shit.
Yeah, it's a fun narrative for the game we're watching in terms of DFS lineups. It's going to be something that's hard to put too much stock into. We've got a super chat here from Eric Traub, and then we'll talk about some of the value pass catching options for Miami. But he wants to know who is our favorite play today that's projected for 10% ownership or less as a flex on DK. So let's first look at some of the ownership and see which players are actually less than 10% owned. And I have to say, I'm not sure there's anyone that stands out to me as being a great play sub 10% owned today.
So for me, it's going to be Mike Gesicki, just because I think if you had said before the year, Mike Gesicki at $5,000 is going to be 9% owned on a single game slate, that would have seemed like a great bargain. I mean, I guess throughout the offseason, we were hearing that they're going to use him more in a blocking role, but I still feel like, so even though we haven't seen it a ton from Gesicki, he's only had 6 targets this year. I still think that he has that upside. He is a very talented receiver, even though they're using him more as a blocker because they've got these other receivers. We know that he's a talented receiver, and I think that he's still going to have some spike weeks. They're still going to take advantage of that on occasion. As I said, 6 targets so far this year, so not great. 6 targets. He does have 6 receptions and a touchdown with those 6 targets, so he has done a little bit. So there's also the possibility that he's earned himself a little bit of a bigger role because of the success he's had so far. But in general, it's just more of a, if he's going to be under 10% owned, we know he has the talent. We know, or we don't know, but my expectation would be that he's going to have some spike weeks. So for me, it's probably Gesicki at 5,000.
So we just got 2 super chats at the same time about Cedric Wilson. Not something I was expected to see. But first, we have from Mark Desio. He wants to know, what do you guys think of Wilson tonight? 3-year, $22 million deal. They got to use him eventually, right? And then we got another one from Chris Albers saying thoughts on Cedric if he plays. So a couple questions here about Cedric Williams. And let's see if we do not have the Dolphins inactives yet. But in terms of Cedric Wilson, I don't think that they have to use him just because they paid him. One of the issues I think that Miami, I wouldn't even call it an issue, but in terms of,
we're seeing a lot of people in chat saying Cedric Wilson is out. Just want to interrupt you there.
Okay,
I don't know if that's, they should have been. Are we within an hour and a half? When does this slate start?
I just saw the Bengals inactives coming. All right. Well, News God just posted them. All right. Okay. So let's see.
Right on.
Good timing. This is like before we were talking about Tua, and then we got the update on Tua that came in right at that time. So the news here. Okay. So those are the Bengals inactives.
Myles Gaskin. Okay.
Myles Gaskin.
So that's going to make me like Sherfield better. I think, I had some concern that Sherfield, maybe played a little bit more last week because of Cedric Wilson being banged up. We didn't know for sure, but with Cedric Wilson inactive, that just makes Trent Sherfield more interesting to me.
Yeah, and Sherfield was already somebody who was expected to be one of the better value plays in our projections today, and also looked like a pretty good leverage play. To your point before now, this is a team where I was about to say there's so many weapons on the team, and that was why I was going to say that it doesn't really matter. The contract they gave Cedric Wilson is just hard to get snaps and routes and targets for everybody. Well, now that's definitely showing to be true. Do they have to use Cedric Wilson? No, he's not even active today. They definitely don't have to use him. But I mean, now we're taking him out of the mix. So Sherfield figures to be on the field more. And with his price point, particularly on DraftKings, more of a DK play than FanDuel just because the min salary is so much lower. At $1,400, I think Trent Sherfield is probably one of the, if not the best value play on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, Trent Sherfield probably is the best value play. I think actually in my article, he was the first value play that I wrote up in terms of just his in the point per dollar. I did a point per dollar section where I just talk about players who look really good point per dollar. And yeah, Trent Sherfield is top of the board in terms of point per dollar plays at 1,400, and probably looks even better now with Cedric Wilson out. So he's really interesting. I also want to touch. So it just occurred to me. I touched on this in my article. I think the Samaje Perine is interesting more so on FanDuel because you generally need lower scores from your players on FanDuel. So I think on DraftKings, I feel like he's so expensive and a touchdown isn't worth as much, so he's less interesting. But on FanDuel, I feel like one touchdown from Samaje Perine would be enough to be optimal. And we have him at under 1% projected ownership. So just because we were talking about low owned players under 10% owned that were really interesting to me, I think that on FanDuel, Samaje Perine is actually a player that I'm going to try to be above the field just because of the really no ownership at all.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. And then I think I was about to cover some of the value options at wideout for the Dolphins, but I think that that news, the super chats took care of it. Do you have any other talking points about the value plays at pass catcher for the Dolphins?
Let's see. So somebody just asked, isn't River Craycraft ahead of Trent Sherfield? And that has not been the case so far. So far, River Craycraft has run 18 routes. He's had 3 targets. I think he scored a touchdown last week, so people might think that based on the touchdown he scored, but only 3 targets so far this year on 18 routes run, whereas Trent Sherfield has run 45 routes and has 5 targets. So it would appear that Trent Sherfield is above Craycraft so far this year. Obviously, that can change game to game. I don't think either of these guys is locked into a role, but just based on what we've seen so far, I think it would appear that Trent Sherfield has the lead there.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly how we're projecting it. That's what the numbers indicate as well. So Sherfield over Craycraft as far as I'm concerned. If you guys want access to all this different information, all the tools that we have for primetime slates, we have a really good deal that's going on until September 29th. Now, the reason that's significant is, do you know what today's date is, Neil?
No idea.
September 29th.
Oh, so my God.
This deal ends September 29th. That happens to be today. If you want to sign up for all the tools that we have for primetime NFL slates, we have a deal right now where you get access to all of it for $1. You just have to sign out using the promo code PRIMETIME. That is PRIMETIME. This is the last day to sign up. Get access to our primetime tools for just $1. Get access to our Discord channel. And for me, what I find to be most valuable when I'm building single game / showdown lineups is the top showdown and single plays tool, which has the projected odds of each player to be the top scoring player based on Alex's simulations. Also, the projected odds for each individual player to be in the optimal flex spots. And then also we've got the projected ownership. So it's a good thing to compare all those numbers and see which players are going over-owned, under-owned. It's really useful for me when I'm building out lineups. All right, so let's talk about the kickers and defenses here for the Dolphins. And, you and I, especially when we're doing our main slate shows, we don't really spend a whole lot of time talking about defense, but we're walking into these showdown slates where we're looking at kickers and defenses being optimal. It seems like on almost every slate at this point. How high priority are the Dolphins defense for you or their kicker, Jason Sanders?
Okay, I just want to say real quick before we get there. I didn't mention Durham Smythe. I also think Durham Smythe is in play. I always forget when you bring up pass catchers. I forget that you mean tight ends too. So I just look at the wide receivers. I also am going to be playing some Durham Smythe under 10% owned. I think he's kind of interesting at 2,800. But as far as kickers and defense, are we just talking generally like both teams, or what are we thinking here?
Just for now, we'll focus on the Dolphin side. So the defense, and then also Jason Sanders, and then I'm just going to throw in one thing also. I'm starting to get concerned that we're going to see kind of like last year where the backup tight ends started to get inflated ownership. I think we might be heading that way with defenses now.
Interesting. Yeah, it's definitely a possibility that you could be concerned about. That makes some sense. Could be something with Durham Smythe too. I don't know if the backup tight ends are still getting a little bit of extra ownership based on last year. But yeah, in terms of defense, the Dolphins defense in particular, I'm going to be playing a lot of the Dolphins defense. My guess is I'll be over the field, assuming that they don't get more steam than they have right now. So we currently have them projected for 3.7% ownership in the captain spot, 18.6% in the utility spot. I know a lot of sharp players who hate playing defenses in showdown slates. I'm glad that they hate doing it because I really enjoy playing defenses in showdown slates, especially this Dolphins defense going up against Joe Burrow. Obviously, very talented offense for the Bengals, but they also have a very bad offensive line. So this Dolphins team could really, create some turnovers. They could get some sacks on Joe Burrow. And what I especially love about it is that this is, one of those correlations that people don't love to play that I think you can really play today, which is Dolphins defense and Joe Burrow in the same lineup. You could play Joe Burrow a captain with a couple pass catchers from the Bengals and still have that Dolphins defense in your lineup. What you're hoping for is a defensive touchdown. The defense gets a lot of points. The offense loses 1 point and then gets the ball back in a scenario where they're going to need to throw the ball more. So I really like pairing the quarterback with the opposing defense, even though that seems counterintuitive. That's part of the reason I like it. A lot of people will be avoiding doing something like that. So the Dolphins defense, just in a vacuum, looks under owned. As I said, 3.7% ownership in the captain spot. We have them optimal 4.2% of the time, 18.6% in the utility spot. We have them optimal 21.8% of the time. You just look at it objectively, the Cincinnati offensive line is going to allow some pressure on Joe Burrow, which could cause some sacks or some turnovers. And then and then I love that correlation piece where you can also play them with Joe Burrow and assume Joe Burrow has a big game, but also, gets sacked a few times and, maybe they turn it over a few times as well.
Yeah, I do think of the defense in this game. I think the narrative behind both the defenses for the Dolphins, it's going to be that the Bengals offensive line sucks, which that's not even a narrative. That's just a fact. They have a terrible offensive line this year. And then the Bengals defense, we talk about them in a little bit. The narrative is going to be that, well, Tua might be banged up. And if that's the case, he could struggle. We know the Dolphins have liked to throw the ball a whole lot this year. That could lead to trouble. We've got a super chat here from Melissa Harvey, who was she has some pretty cool baseball cards that she was potentially sending in to get graded to PSA, some really cool Ricky Henderson rookie cards. But she's also left us a super chat here. Hey guys, who are your must-haves for DK cash? All right, so the ones that I would start with, number one is for sure Joe Burrow. Yep. Another one for me is going to be Trent Sherfield, just because I think he's the best value play and he's going to open up a lot for us in terms of flexibility. Who are the other ones that you would look at, Neil, and just be like, these are the players that overall you feel the safest about?
I think Evan McPherson looks pretty safe. He projects really well from the kicker spot. He's cheaper than Jason Sanders, but projects like 2 points better. So I really like Evan McPherson. As you said, Joe Burrow is my number one in my lineups. From there, T. Higgins probably. He projects really well at 8,200. So T. Higgins is probably in that group. Yeah, I think those are a few that'll get you in the right direction.
We've got another super chat here. And by the way, I agree with all those guys as well. Super chat from our guy Fanatic717 or 717. He wants to know, could you play 3 running backs today? And then also, thanks for all you guys do. I don't think I'm going to have very many lineups with 3 running backs. It's not to say I'm making it not like I'm not setting a rule in Fantasy Cruncher to not do it. I'm just not overall prioritizing the running backs super highly in this matchup. So, Joe Mixon we have as being somewhere around neutrally leveraged, but then we've got Chase Edmonds being a little bit overowned. Mostert, I think, is a decent value play, but none of these guys are the highest priority plays for me. So with that in mind, I just don't think I'm going to get to very many lineups with 3 RBs.
Yeah, I think I am on the same page as you. I think that I'll probably have several with 2 because I like Joe Mixon. I think that he is, one of those studs you can pay up for. And then I think that I'll be mixing in Mostert, Edmonds, Samaje Perine, and even some Alec Ingold here and there. But I don't think that I'm going to have too many lineups with 3 just because the running backs are not near the top of projection. So outside of Mixon, I feel like the other guys are kind of mixing and matching into different lineups, but I'm not going to have a ton where I have 3. I might have a few in 150, but it's not a big priority for me.
All right, we've got a super chat here from our guy Miami Mike, and I know what he wants. He wants Eric to do the list, but Eric's not here, and I'm not doing it because I fucking hate that bit. But
I've never
Miami
even
Mike, I see
watched the
I see your
movies.
super chat. I appreciate you leaving the super chat. If you want Eric to leave you weird whispering type of messages into the microphone, good news because we got NBA back. What are we? We are like 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks away from NBA. Then we're going to be full go with all that. And Eric will be back to do all the bits around here. There he is. He comes up, he pops up into the chat here. He just knows when he's being called upon to say hello, Gregory. So there is Eric still popping up to do the bit for our guy Miami Mike here. But yeah, just a few weeks away from basketball. I'm looking forward to that coming back. Let's talk about the Cincinnati side of this game. And by the way, if you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Jordan, have we hit the 80K mark yet? How many more do we need? 7? All right. 7 more
So
subscribers.
close, guys.
And we get to 80,000. So guys, either do it now or I'm going to have to make some burner accounts as soon as the show ends. 7 more subs and we get to 80,000 on the channel. It'd be really cool. But let's talk about the Bengals and then also just shout out once again. Sponsored by No House Advantage today. A lot of their contests have had overlay. Really easy to enter the contest just by going to Stokastic.com. We've got optimal lineups already built. You could upload right into No House Advantage. And if you sign up clicking on the link below, get a $50 bonus on your first sign up. So let's talk about the Bengals and starting with Joe Burrow. He is currently the player that we have projected to be the most likely optimal player in the utility spot today. We've got a lot of positive leverage going to Joe Burrow. I haven't finished building my lineups yet because I was waiting for some of the inactives, which came out while we were doing the show. Joe Burrow could end up being my most rostered player today. In fact, I suspect that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I would assume the same for me as well. Joe Burrow just looks fantastic. He's cheaper than Jamar Chase and Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. He's the fourth most expensive player on the slate, and he has the highest projection of every player on the slate. We've got him projected for 12% ownership in the captain spot. He's optimal there 13.5% of the time. And then in the utility spot, we have Joe Burrow projected for 51.2% ownership, optimal 59% of the time. So he just looks really great in the Sims. And from a projection, a point per dollar standpoint, Joe Burrow is the number one player on the slate. Obviously, these wide receivers have huge upside, and there's a good chance that one of those wide receivers ends up outscoring him. But still, I think Joe Burrow has a very high likelihood, has the highest likelihood of anybody on the slate to end up in the optimal lineup.
Yeah, we got another super chat from Miami Mike. He's following up to say, hello, Eric. Now that he's noticed that Eric is in the chat, he's able to throw in the hello, Eric, as opposed to just the hello, Greg. So Miami Mike, once again, we appreciate you. If you have any DFS related questions, you could throw those in as well, and we'll be happy to answer them. But let's talk about the rest of the situation with Cincinnati. And one thing that I don't want to say it's a pricing issue on Samaje Perine, but he's $9,000 over on FanDuel. On DK's priced at $7,600. The reason being is because Joe Mixon was banged up over the weekend. So I think both sites just got proactive and said, hey, we don't want to have a backup running back that ends up being extremely cheap and just being a kind of free square in Showdown contest. What are you going to do with Samaje Perine when he's this expensive? He doesn't project particularly well points per dollar.
Yeah, so Samaje Perine is not going to look great in the tools. I haven't actually, let me look at how he looks in the tools. I'm assuming he looks absolutely awful. Yeah, 0% chance of being the optimal in the captain spot, 0.2% chance in the utility. I'm probably going to be more than that. I'm going to have some Samaje Perine, but it's not because he, looks great from a point per dollar standpoint, from a projection standpoint. He looks awful. 7,400 is just way too expensive for the backup running back for Cincinnati. The only place you should be playing Samaje Perine, if there is a place you should be playing Samaje Perine, would be in the largest field tournaments. Really, even a small field GPP. I wouldn't play Samaje Perine. Only in the largest field GPPs is he a consideration. And honestly, 5.4% projected ownership in the flex spot is probably too high for Samaje Perine. I'm still probably going to get there some. I don't even know if I'm going to be above the field if the field is really at 5.4% ownership. I probably will. I probably still will, just because you only have so many options that are really low owned, and I like to sprinkle those guys in. But I'm not going to be like 20% Samaje Perine. The price tag is just too high. If he were half this price tag, I might consider going pretty high on Samaje Perine and hoping for that, miracle touchdown, long run or something like that. But at 7,400, really, like one splash play, unless it's a, 90 yarder or something like that, one, 10-yard touchdown is not going to be enough. So I'm not going to be going overboard on Samaje Perine at 7,400, but he'll make my player pool.
Shout out to Malakar, who's gifting some YouTube memberships over there. I see that somebody got a free subscription to the YouTube channel from Malakar. We appreciate you and Malakar, one of the OGs of the chat. Guy is always around. We
got to 80K.
All right,
Thanks,
there we
guys.
go. All right, there we go.
You've got a drink, even if it's water. Cheers to that.
Cheers, Neil, to Costco water.
Is Costco water pretty good?
Oh, yeah. Kirkland, you get like 40 water bottles for $2.
That's a good deal.
Yeah, and then we ruin the environment by throwing it all out. Nothing better. Couple super chats to catch up on. This one from Nick Engel. Does Pirine scare you too much to play Mixon in a one lineup build on FanDuel because he makes me nervous rostering Mixon? Thanks, guys. So the issue with Mixon last week, he just kind of got banged up. If I'm going to say anything negative about Joe Mixon today, it actually isn't because of Samaje Perine. It's because on FanDuel, we currently have him as the most overowned player on the entire slate, which is not because of Samaje Perine. It's just because there are a bunch of players who are priced around Mixon that we have as being more likely to be in the optimal lineup today. So it does look like our projections favor the pass catchers in this game much more than Joe Mixon as a running back, but Perine doesn't really factor into that. I just think Mixon's going a little overowned.
Yeah, I like Mixon tonight. He's run 87 routes so far this year and has 18 targets. So he seems to be more involved in the passing game so far this year than in the past. So Mixon will be a big part of my game plan tonight, even if he is a little bit overowned. I don't know. I'll have to look.
It was a FanDuel question, by the way, if that makes
sense. On FanDuel. Okay. So the passing game work isn't quite as interesting, but Joe Mixon is still a guy who I'm going to want to have in a lot of my lineups. He's only 1,200 on FanDuel, so he's actually cheaper than Hill, Chase, Burrow, Tua. He's more expensive than T. Higgins, less expensive than Waddle. So I guess he's a reasonable price on FanDuel, and he becomes a little bit more interesting when there is actually a little bit less. It's not a full point per reception. So, running backs typically get a little bit more interested on FanDuel. Yeah, he looks like he's a little bit overowned. Maybe I won't have as much of the field, but, Joe Mixon's a guy who can go off in any game, and certainly in this matchup he can. So I have interest in Joe Mixon. Whether I'm going to match the field in their 50% ownership on FanDuel, probably not.
We have another super chat from Eric Traub. He wants to know, this is a question specific to Eric and myself. Was the Whisperer song by the Yin Yang Twins playing in the background the other night when you guys went tip to tip? No, Eric's song of choice is My Neck, My Back. That is something he plays on as soon as I walk into his house whenever I come over. So that's Eric's song of choice for when the lights turn off at his.
Is that a real song?
You don't know that song?
My Neck, My Back.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't. We can't play it right now, but I would recommend giving it a listen.
I'll check it out.
Yeah. So let's talk about the rest of the Bengals and the pass catchers in particular. I actually think this might be the most important part of the entire slate. Is we have a lot of really high-end receivers for the Cincinnati Bengals. Jamar Chase, who's been a little bit of a letdown this year. Then we also have T. Higgins. We got Tyler Boyd in the mix. Do any of these stand out above all the rest for you when it comes to the Bengals receivers?
I mean, so just based on our tools, T. Higgins looks great. Looks like he's going to be the most under-owned of the group. 10.9% ownership in the captain spot, 12.5% optimal in the captain spot, 37.8% ownership in the util spot, 42.6% ownership in the optimal in the util spot. So T. Higgins is probably the number one for me among pass catchers for the Bengals. Tyler Boyd actually looks a little bit overowned in the Sims. The Sims would suggest that he's going overowned. I'm still going to be playing plenty of Tyler Boyd. He's in a tough spot. I was thinking about this earlier. So I was, writing my article. He doesn't really fit as a stud play. There were 7 players who projected for 15 or more fantasy points today. And then there was a big gap. And then Tyler Boyd at just under 10 fantasy point projections. So he didn't really make it into that group. And then he didn't make it into the point per dollar group because at 7,000, his projection is, a little bit underwhelming. And then he's not really an under-owned option because he's getting about 20% ownership. But Tyler Boyd is one of those guys that we know any given week he can have a spike week. So I'm probably going to be close to the field on Tyler Boyd. I wouldn't want to get much less than the 25-ish% that the field is playing him. That's probably about where I'm going to be on Tyler Boyd. Not my favorite play on the site. I think T. Higgins is probably my favorite. I watched Jordan Vanek did a short video today, which I watched. Former Stokastic contributor, I guess Osmo contributor, but same thing. Where he broke down how the Bengals react to the blitz, and he's saying that we're expecting some blitzing, and he suggested that Jamar Chase is his favorite today. Jamar Chase could benefit from the Dolphins blitzing a lot. I think that's obviously factored into our sims as well, but I thought it was interesting. I think that's a good point. And Jamar Chase, he's the wide receiver one, I think, for the Bengals. Even with T Higgins stepping up a little bit this year, I think Jamar Chase is still the number one for the Bengals. He's just so expensive that T Higgins is going to be optimal more often when you get that $2,800 price discount on T Higgins. But I think Jamar Chase, if you can fit him in your lineup, he's probably the likeliest of these guys to put up a spike game.
Yeah, so for me, I could say that in the build that I had made earlier, which was, not a final one, I still have to rebuild lineups for all the inactives and whatnot. But I got to T Higgins the most of these wideouts on both DraftKings and FanDuel. And it's mostly just due to price point. Like if you look at FanDuel, we have T Higgins is the only player priced at the 11,500 mark. There's nobody at 11,000. And then even at 10,500, that's where you've got Edmonds. But so there's an $1,000 price gap between him and the next cheapest guy. It kind of just puts him on this island in terms of pricing. And then for DK purposes, the thing when it comes to Jamar Chase is the opportunity cost of playing Jamar Chase is there's just other options there. We have Joe Burrow, Tua to pay up for. And then we've also got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle at the top of the pricing. It's just so much easier to fit T Higgins into lineups. We currently have him as one of the most positively leveraged players on the slate. He is actually the most positively leveraged skill position player in our simulations right now. So Higgins is going to be the priority for me, and it's mostly because of pricing. I'm not going to tell you that I think he's going to have a better game than Jamar Chase, but it's reasonable to think because of where his salary's at, it's just easier to fit him into lineup. So hopefully no concussions this week, because that's been an ongoing issue for him this year. Knocked out of the first game of the season with a concussion, and then just a few days ago also had to briefly leave the game after taking a hit to the head. So hopefully he's able to avoid any of that from happening. We have another super chat here, this one from Sam Pierce. He's saying, if Tua actually has a back injury, do you think it will impair his ability to throw long? And if so, would the Dolphins running backs be used more? It's kind of hard to say this because it seemed to me like Tua pretty clearly had a concussion last week that they let him play through. But if he actually had a back injury that was severe, I find it unlikely that they would let him play in week 4 on a short week. If this was something that could really be an issue for him long-term for the rest of the season, the Dolphins are 3-0. Right? You'd probably logically think you hold him out of this game, make sure that he's really well rested for next week or the subsequent week, because you don't want to compromise your go-to, the most important piece of your team in week 4 of the season. So I don't really think it has anything with predictive value in terms of how they're going to change their game plan.
Yeah, especially on a short week. I just don't see them risking if he has a back injury. That seems like something you don't really want to mess around with. So I think it's unlikely that he has a back injury. I guess if you think he has a back injury, then sure, maybe they try to go to the running game a little bit more. But I just think that if he had a back injury, they'd be more likely to just run out Teddy this week. Teddy's a pretty solid backup. So I don't know why they wouldn't just, give him the 2 weeks rest instead of 4 days. So I think it's unlikely, but if you want to factor it in, then sure, I guess they could go to the run a little bit more.
Yeah. So is it possible? Yeah, but it's something that I think is really hard to predict. And then after the game, if Tua throws the ball 15 times and they run the ball a bunch, it'll seem really obvious, but it's kind of hard for me to know that ahead of time. Another super chat from Miami Mike. Have a great night, everyone. I got stuck going out to dinner with the in-laws. Well, Mike, enjoy your night out and basketball. We're going to be back here before long. So thank you very much for the super chats today. We appreciate you watching. Let's now move on to the rest of the wideouts when it comes to the Bengals. Are there any punt guys a la a Trent Sherfield that you think also make sense from the Bengals standpoint? Any of those kind of punt plays that stand out to you?
All right, let me take a look at the Bengals a little bit closer. They're not going to be as interesting because the top 3 are pretty clear on the Bengals, the top 3 receivers. The running backs, we already talked about Samaje Perine, they priced up. Chris Evans hasn't been getting much work outside of like returns, so he's not all that interesting. Hayden Hurst is 5,400. I think Hayden Hurst, if you count him, sure. Hayden Hurst. I guess Mitchell Wilcox is arguably in play at 600. I'll probably have some Mitchell Wilcox in my portfolio. He's only 4.1% projected ownership. He's unlikely to have a big game. Let me see, what are his numbers so far this year? Mitchell Wilcox, 16 routes run and 2 targets in the 2 games that he's played so far this year. So that's not all that promising. I guess Drew Sample being out, maybe that's a factor. Drew Sample is out, so maybe Mitchell Wilcox actually does become a little bit more interesting, as does obviously Hayden Hurst is the tight end one for Cincinnati. But I do think that actually does make Mitchell Wilcox a little bit more interesting. So I guess I would throw him out there as a Bengals player who's not going to be getting a ton of ownership, who you could consider playing. It's still a long shot. Devin Asiasi, does Devin Asiasi become even a little bit interesting? Not going to get any ownership. I don't think he's had much opportunity so far this year. Looking that up right now.
By the way, since you brought up Hayden Hurst, why I'm bringing that up, I really like Hurst today. I don't know what his prop number is at now. Earlier in the day, I bet him for over 2.5 receptions. That seemed really low to me, considering the kind of workload that he's had this year. And I think this is something that goes hand in hand with the Bengals having a bad offensive line, where one of the reasons that Jamar Chase probably hasn't had the big games that a lot of us were expecting is the same reason that Hayden Hurst is getting more of a target share, which is just that the Bengals offensive line breaking down and generally being shitty and not giving Joe Burrow time to throw the football. He has to throw some shorter routes to guys like Hayden Hurst, and Hurst through 3 games has 17 targets. That is an insane amount of targets to go to Hayden Hurst when there are all these pass catching options on the Bengals. So as far as mid-range plays go, Hurst is somebody I like getting overweight to the field on. Were you able to pull up those numbers?
So I didn't find anything for Devin Asiasi. I think there's a good chance that he has just not played so far this year. I'm looking up actually Mitchell Wilcox. I want to see how he did in week 3 specifically. It looks like Mitchell Wilcox, yeah, he played 39 snaps last week. So Mitchell Wilcox is definitely in play as well. He's still a long shot play. Did not get targeted a ton, but I 100% agree with you. Hayden Hurst is very interesting. I think that they could be targeting Hayden Hurst in some of those if they're being blitzed. If Joe Burrow is feeling some pressure, Hayden Hurst could be a target. He's run 111 routes through 3 games, so he is just behind. So he's 4th on the team behind those top 3 receivers. He's had 15 targets through 3 games. So yeah, Hayden Hurst definitely in play in this game as well.
Yeah, I think that I agree with you because it's been so many targets going to Hurst. Like I said, 17 through 3 games and relatively cheap price point. It's hard to ignore that kind of looks that he's getting from Joe Burrow. Now, time to talk about the Bengals kicker and the defense. And Evan McPherson is somebody who stands out quite a bit for us in terms of where our simulations are at. And McPherson, I think, is kind of like the 1B to the Trent Sherfield 1A in terms of top value plays. Those are the 2 guys I like the most to save salary with on this slate. Sherfield, that's more so on DK, and then McPherson really on both sides. I think he's a really strong play as a kicker.
Yeah, I really like McPherson tonight. He just projects way better than Jason Sanders. And in the Sims, we've got him at 2.8% projected ownership. He's the optimal captain 5.7% of the time. So that is some massive positive leverage on Evan McPherson in the captain spot. And then in the utility spot, project for 23% ownership, optimal 31% of the time. People really hate the kicker captain doing well. We saw that this week after we saw it win this past Monday. Yeah. After we were asked on the show, could I play a kicker in the captain spot? We said yes. I don't know if people who are listening actually did, but worked out well. I typically, even when I'm playing kicker in the captain spot, I'm not playing the kind of lineups that are using the full salary, which sometimes I think that's the reason that we see them optimal more often than their own, because, you know, having the kicker in the captain spot allows you to play all of the studs. So playing Evan McPherson in the captain spot will allow you to play, you know, 3 or 4 of Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Tua. Those are the 7 studs on the slate. So I think having cheap captain allows you to play, you know, 4 of those guys. So a lot of people who play the kicker in the captain spot are going to be using their full salary, playing more studs using their full salary. I'd be more inclined to, you know, not have one of those studs in my lineup and instead play somebody like Tyler Boyd, just a little bit cheaper, who I think still has that upside. But just overall, I think I'm going to have plenty of Evan McPherson, more so in the utility spot.
All right, a couple super chats to answer here, and that will bring us to the end of our show. But don't go anywhere, guys, because Live Before Lock is right after Neil and I. So do us a favor and like the video. We appreciate all the subs. We did get over 80,000 for the channel on the show. That is really cool. It's a big number. The super chats here. First from Twisted Reality Gaming. Tyler Boyd or Chase Edmonds in the flex on DK. So between Boyd and Edmonds, do you have a preference, Neil?
In the flex on DK, I think my preference would probably be Tyler Boyd, but let me look at the
it's Boyd for me. You know, the rest of the makeup of the lineup would matter a little bit, but just some of the things that I mentioned before in terms of the concerning snap share for Chase Edmonds in terms of he's played less snaps in each subsequent week of the season, while Mostert has played more snaps each week of the season. I would lean towards Boyd of the two.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page as you. It's pretty close for me. I think that they're sort of similar. They're plays that they're not going to project that well. They're like moderately owned, but they both have the spike upside. But I think that I see the path to Boyd spiking a little bit easier than Chase Edmonds. So it's going to be Boyd for me as well.
All right. Then we got a super chat from Call Me Touch CMT. Hashtag nuke the bots. Hashtag no porn here. Hashtag good guys. Yeah, I got one quick. We had one of the bots show up, and I was able to mute him pretty quickly. I was quick to the trigger on that one. Now, finally, a super chat here from our guy Jorge. Thoughts on playing defenses and kickers when this match will be a high-scoring one? Also, who are the top 3 optimal captains for DK? So, overall, just any closing thoughts on kickers and defenses for tonight, Neil? For me personally, I'm going to be playing a lot of Evan McPherson. He's my favorite of the kickers and defenses by a mile in this game.
Yeah, it's probably Evan McPherson. And I kind of like Miami's defense too. Even in a high scoring game, I just think the more important thing is the number of turnovers that they can create. And I think with this bad offensive line for the Bengals, they are live to force some turnovers and potentially score a defensive touchdown, which is what you really want when you're playing a defense in a high scoring game. So I think that it's viable to be playing the defenses and kickers in this game, even in a high scoring game. And they also allow you some salary relief. They're like the lowest, besides Trent Sherfield, they are I think the safest, actually, probably even including Trent Sherfield, the kickers and defenses are generally safer than other low-owned options, and they allow you to play more of those studs. So even in a high-scoring game, a lot of the volume, a lot of the scoring is going to be coming from those 7 players who I mentioned as studs, but those players are also all pretty expensive. So it allows you to play more of those guys. So I do think that kickers and defenses are certainly in play tonight. As far as top 3 optimal captains for DraftKings, I mean, we can just that's pretty easy to answer that one. It's Burrow, it's Higgins, and it's Tua.
Yeah, so relative to ownership for me, Burrow and Higgins are going to be 2 of them. If I want to go really contrarian with a captain, I'm kind of inclined to say Hayden Hurst, just because he's in this salary tier all by his own. There aren't other guys I want to play that are priced around him, so I think he's just going to put you on really different looking builds compared to other people. And by the way, I don't know if I'm really answering your question properly, Jorge, because I'm not doing it in terms of just this is the players that are most likely to be optimal captain. I'm kind of doing it relative to ownership as well. And Hurst is somebody who just stands out to me as a contrarian play today. When people are not going to be playing him in the captain spot, he's priced so much differently that it would put you on totally different builds. And like we said before, 17 targets through 3 games. He's been a really frequent target of Joe Burrow. So kind of covered a lot of the basics here of the slate. We've gone through all the players. We do have live before lock on right after. So do you have any closing thoughts about the game, Neil?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify. I was answering the question, optimal captain. Those are the top 3 in terms of the percent they show up in the Sims as the optimal captain, not necessarily the best in terms of leverage. So yeah, I would throw out Evan McPherson, kind of interesting there. Hayden Hurst, I really like the call out there. He's a player I have interest in. I think that does it. Those are some good answers, though. Closing thoughts on this slate. I've said it before. I'll say it again. You can play your defense against your quarterback. I think that this is a great slate to do so. I feel like we've probably covered just about everybody that I have interest in on this slate. So yeah, I think we're good.
All right, so that does it for us, guys. If you haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and stick around because Live Before Lock is right next.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I am Andy Francis. You are who the hell knows, but we together tonight are going to be taking on the house. And who is this house you speak of? House of the Dragon? No, it's No House Advantage. And they're going to be holding their Versus the House contest, which they always hold, where if we pick up the 5 player props correctly for this game between the Bengals and the Dolphins, we're going to get up to 20 times our money. That's the contest we're going to be looking at in this video. Yesterday, we actually talked about the Pick'em contest that No House Advantage holds, where first place gets you $15,000. But then again, like I said, I'll be waiting there for you, so we'll split it. But I'm not greedy like you. We should be like Brad Pitt, George Clooney. Let's split everything up, okay? No side pots. And if you're not familiar with No House Advantage, they have those 2 contests along with all different other sports, all the major sports. If you want to get involved in these type of contests, they have them. You can go over there, check it out, use the link down below in the description. They're actually going to match your first deposit up to $50. Slap 50 down, get 50, make 20 times our money. It's a lot of numbers, but it's worth it. Here we go. So looking at this game, I'm going to start with the quarterbacks, just like I did yesterday for the Pick'em contest. I'm looking at Joe Burrow's yardage total. I believe Burrow's trending in the right direction. They're coming home for a primetime game. This isn't the Andy Dalton Bengals. We've seen him elevate in big spots throughout the playoffs against teams like the Chiefs and the Ravens last year when he threw for an absurd amount of yards. And then his yardage total for this prop in the versus the house game is lower than it actually is on the sports books. So you're going to give me a couple yards over there, I'm going to take them. So give me the over on Joe Burrow passing yards. Then on the other side, we got a quarterback who we didn't even know if he was going to play. A lot of controversy about him coming out. If he takes another shot, they're not letting him limp back out onto that field because of that Monopoly monocle on him right now. There's a magnifying glass on him, so if he takes a big shot, he's out. Maybe they're going to go with a more run-centric approach. Their offense did not stay on the field for long stretches in the last.
Fine. Jordan Klein doesn't like fun.
No.
Absolute fun. Hater. You know what, though? That's Savoca and I like fun. Welcome to NFL Live Before Lock, presented by... right off the bat, Prestige
We hit the
Worldwide.
80K, man. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm interrupting right off the bat. Yeah, it's not like
80K.
welcome. Like, it's not... this is a special occasion. 80K. Thanks, guys. Sorry, I cut you off on purpose.
Welcome to NFL Live Before Lock, presented by No House Advantage. I'm Eric Lindquist, excited to be here with you. 80,000 subs, 80,014. Look at that. Climbing up. So appreciate everybody for tuning in so regularly to all of the great programming. I don't know why sometimes, because I'm a lunatic, but I really, really appreciate all of you. Hi, Mike. Maybe I'll do the bit a little bit later there for you. But guys, excited to be talking this Cincinnati-Miami football game. Should be a good one, 48.5 total. Everything looks great, but hit that like button. That does not look as good as it should be with as many people as we have watching this program right now. So let's get to that. I guess he introduced himself, but I'll introduce him now here. It's my dude at Draftaholic, Matt Savoca. Look at that smile. I missed it. How you doing, my dude?
Missed you, man. I'm so excited to break down a very exciting Thursday night football game on paper, first of all. And yeah, it's a momentous occasion. Thank you guys for all being here today and for the 80K of you who subscribed. You guys are making the right decisions. Let's make some good decisions tonight and win some money. How's that sound?
That sounds really good. I'm excited. Chris, I'm always excited. I'm excited when I wake up in the morning. I piss excellence. That's what I do. But also, hello, Michael. I expect your pathetic life in order. Jordan hates that bit so much too.
Is that a Jigsaw?
It's Jigsaw.
thing?
It's his avatar. Miami
That's
Mike. Haven't seen you in a long
a
time.
5.5 out of 10 Jigsaw.
Oh, Michael.
It's like cutting him off for me. Is it cutting him off? Yeah, we can't even hear it. It's like
Can't even hear it.
Zoom like did the audio.
Zoom does like
pass through. Yeah,
Zoom canceled me.
tough
It's okay.
life.
Is what it is. Oh my.
Eric is muted. Oh, chat's lit already. We're gonna talk football at all? Nah, we're not even gonna do it.
God, Jordan Klein with a drive-by shooting. Why would you do such a thing to me? Smoking them cigarettes. It was great. Guys, we have a football game to talk about. Savoca, anything stand out to you on this slate? Any inactives, such as Cedric Wilson, you really want to touch on before we get going?
I mean, I think the big players are going to make plays here, or you're specifically fading them because they're not. I don't think there's going to be a ton of well, I should say it's a Thursday night football game. There's probably going to be some fourth string tight end that scores that I don't even know the name of. But no, I think this is a game where you focus on the studs. In Cincinnati, I guess you've got three of them, and well, Hayden Hurst has made a name for himself. But honestly, the answer is no. The answer is no with these inactives. I'm sticking to the core receivers on both lineups, or excuse me, in both lineups that I want to focus on in all of my showdown lineups tonight.
It's not very nice at all. I know there's some mean people, and I didn't know what to do with my tears, but it's okay. We'll be all right. Tua's not out. Nobody said Tua was out, Josh Gillum. Nobody said that. We're ready to rock, though. The quarterback position is where we start. We go position by position. Let's party. Again, 48.5 total. Pretty large total, implied total 25.75 for Cincinnati here at the moment. We've got Miami on the other side. Looks like a pretty decent spot for them offensively. I feel like Tua, that's where we got to start. The road quarterback coming off of a flat out concussion. We'll call it what it is. A spade's a spade. How are you feeling about his prospects tonight?
I'm actually pretty concerned because, as we've already talked about on the deeper dive, this is a situation that the NFL is getting involved with, where this kind of feels like a head injury that we're kind of trying to sweep under the rug because it's Thursday Night Football and the Cincinnati Bengals are wearing white. But the Bengals are also third in PFF's defensive rating as a team this season. And that's really what matters to me at home against a banged up quarterback who, by the way, has one of his top weapons also banged up. I'm not, building multiple lineups. I'm not just shying away entirely from Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami weapons, but I am concerned that they're actually going to run into a buzzsaw tonight. And I think that onslaught Bengals stacks have kind of floated their way towards the top of my lineups right now because of that situation. Just saying that Tua has a risk of ruin here that the field might not be taking into consideration fully. I'm not saying he doesn't have a ceiling. I mean, the Vegas total and the fact that it's within 4 points as a spread tells you all you need to know about that. But I think there is a downside here, pretty significantly lower floor compared to Burrow.
Yeah, I think so too, but I don't know how to go about projecting such a thing. Like, it's very hard for me to sit before you and say that he's going to be limited or I'm concerned about this or that. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. He's a quarterback. He's one of two guys at the position, and I'm not going to be lower on him as a result of stuff I have no idea about. Like, you can speculate all we want, and then you're going to feel like a genius. Oh, I told you he was limited, or, oh, I told you he was going to go off. For me, I think it's kind of a positive. We saw what he did in come from behind mode against Baltimore. I didn't think he was capable of those kind of things. 50 pass attempts, threw for 469. As a dog on the road on a short week, I got to expect that, if they're going to get down early, he's going to get the ability to go air it out. So I'm a little bit
he'll
higher.
Chuck it. Yeah.
Oh, he'll chuck it. And I'm pretty positive they have one of the best coaches in the NFL already. And we're 3 games into this season. Pretty wild to think about. But Cincinnati on the other side, as you said, Bengal stats getting to the top of your lineups. Joe Burrow. I mean, if you're making one lineup and you tell me I have to play Tua or Joe Burrow, I'm going to play Joe Burrow, but that's not how this game works. How are you feeling about Burrow today?
I particularly like Joe Burrow as a flex play in tournament lineups where I'm getting different in other places. In a vacuum, you said it. I just like him as the highest scoring player on a showdown slate. There's a lot of ways this goes right. Jamar Chase gets open, gets loose for a few. T. Higgins catches a contested catch in the end zone. Obviously, there are weapons on the other side, but I just look at this game and I look at the PFF rating for the Miami defense. They're 20th overall in defensive rating. Now, it's not the be-all, end-all. This is a small sample size still, but I see that as one of the bigger differences in this game. Both teams overachieving on offense, one team overachieving on defense in Cincinnati, Miami not so much.
Yeah, Javon Holland's been awesome for them at the safety position. And outside of him, I mean, I don't think people understand how bad Xavier Howard's been through 3 games. It was more of a committee to shut down some of what was going on with Diggs, Gabriel Davis last week. Isaiah McKenzie in the slot went completely nuts. But Xavier Howard has not been good. A 57.9 rating on PFF. That is what you call bad and not good. Anything about that?
Just to the general point that I can't trust Miami's defense, which I thought was kind of on the way up. In DVOA, they look a little bit better. Actually, I'm looking at, no, it's their offense that looks a little bit better. I'm like, why are they number 1?
I was going to say,
absolutely
that is not.
They're 24th in total defensive DVOA. Yes, their offense is making the shootout potential happen, and that's what Vegas is kind of glomming onto. I don't actually know if that's the most likely outcome for this team, considering I think they're going to be playing from behind early. The Miami Dolphins are.
I think I'm with you. And I think that makes me intrigued to head over to No House Advantage and take advantage of some of the passing yards props. Once again, they're static. We'll check in on them here a little bit, but you guys need to go sign up over there right now. Wanted to give them a shout out as our sponsor because there has been overlay there routinely on every single one of these shows. And I want to make you guys money. That's kind of what we're here to do. I'm here to be silly once in a while, but when it comes down to it, is I like money. We all like money. That's why you're watching this. Right now, it's just less than half full for that Thursday night football showdown. So take advantage of that. $15 to get in, 2,400 entries, 10,049 currently in. That is something you want to take advantage of. Not a whole lot else to talk about in terms of quarterbacks. There's 2 of them on all of these slates, but going to be talking about pass catching options here going along with both of them. If you had to captain one of those 2 quarterbacks, do you have a preference between those 2?
I guess if you're like running a bunch of optimal lineups, Tua's probably the one who's going to get in your lineups a little bit more. But genuinely, I like Burrow's spot significantly more. I'm trying to get up to him.
I think I'm with you. I think Burrow, I mean, it's negligible, $200. I'm going to find myself getting to more Burrow here at the top end. And then Tua, I do like getting to some of him in the flex and captain as well. That shouldn't surprise anybody. Quarterbacks, they're high floor options. You should get to a lot of them when we're playing Showdown, unless they're named Geno Smith, in which case I'll pass. But anything else at the quarterback position?
Geno Smith passed for 325 yards in a loss on Sunday.
Stop it.
All right.
As a Vikings fan, I will not allow for positive Geno Smith talk.
This is fair. We should talk about the quarterbacks who are on the slate. Honestly, I do think that Tua, the thing I'm most concerned because didn't they also say that he was dealing with a little bit of an ankle injury as well? Yeah,
I heard something about that, but that's kind of gone by the wayside.
Maybe that was one of their excuses that they kind of were like, no, we're going with the back injury, not the
neck, my back, my.
We knew it. Okay.
Somebody was going to do it.
I do actually think that there's
had to be me.
There's significantly less rushing upside. And honestly, I've been impressed with the Miami offensive line so far this year. And Tua's still not running. He's 1 red zone carry per game, 4 total carries this year. I thought I would see a little bit more, but now with an ankle injury, you're just hoping for a ton of passes and a comeback effort.
All right, well, let's talk some of the running game here, and it begins with Joe Mixon in that department before we get to figuring out the Edmonds-Mostert thing. Best of luck to all of us in that regard. But Mixon, my God, if you're going to be finding one option that's going to take the air out of the ball, Joe Mixon, he's going to be the all-purpose back. He is out there nonstop once again this season. If you're playing the old Rainmakers, you know how valuable getting to a running back like him, or once upon a time, RIP DeAndre Swift. But these guys who aren't the superstar type dudes that can still be played in every single lineup. How are you feeling about Joe Mixon, who feels like one of the better options at the captain spot today?
He definitely does. And there have been a couple of yellow flags, I'll say, about Joe Mixon. First of all, he got a little bit banged up in that game against the Jets in week 3. He has not played more than a 76% snap share, and his opportunities have been a little bit more variable than I thought. But he's already got a game with 36 total opportunities. That's targets and carries. And so even in a game when he played 66% of the snaps, he still got 19 total opportunities against a Miami defense that we believe has some holes here. If they're going the narrative that we believe Joe Mixon's going to clean up in the second half, and I think he's a very strong play. Like you said, at the captain spot, I think he's okay. You're certainly going to have to pay up in salary for a player like Mixon, but it's a situation where it's not too much either. The leverage score is basically right at his optimal lineup percentage, meaning that I'm probably going to be at least with the field if I'm building multiple lineups, if not over.
Yeah, I'm going to be over on Joe Mixon. I think that's one of the things where obviously pass catchers on DraftKings are far more valuable, full point PPR. Joe Mixon isn't exactly uninvolved when it comes to the old passing game. So far seeing 7 and 9 targets in 2 of 3 games. That just makes him exponentially more valuable as well. If we like Cincinnati in this game, which I do, even if I'm not betting it, I feel like Joe Mixon has to be a route that I take quite a bit at the captain spot. But let's go to the Miami running game, which is just a headache and a half. Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, almost identical ownership, massive salary decrease in terms of $1,800 going to Raheem Mostert. And if you guys are paying attention, Edmonds is getting a lot of like the valuable type touches. He's been the only guy who's gotten inside the 10 touches for the Miami Dolphins this season. But Mostert last week on the field more than Chase Edmonds. This is kind of a freaky spot for me. How are you kind of playing this for Miami?
I think I'm team Mostert over Edmonds by a hair. In total opportunities, Mostert won the battle over Edmonds 10-7 last week, 14-8 in week 2, and that was after Edmonds got a clear lead in opportunities 16-6 in week 1. So clearly there was a shift in philosophy between weeks 1 and 2, and they didn't necessarily go away from it in week 2. Now, that doesn't mean that Chase Edmonds isn't going to be there in key situations, but if I'm choosing in a running back by committee, I want the speedster. I want the breakaway guy. I want the guy who can change the slate in one play. For me, that's Mostert. It is kind of a toss-up. It's kind of tough. Also, you get that salary saving as well. I'll go with Mostert over Edmonds tonight.
We got a super chat here. Caleb McLean. Eric, favorite 2 prize picks for tonight? Again, No House Advantage is the sponsor of our show. We absolutely love them. We enjoy PP. We enjoy all of these sites that are just phenomenal in terms of giving you guys opportunity.
Oh, no. He's going to get... You heard it, too. We'll play it back. We'll play it back.
I have no idea what I said. Did I say I love PP? Is that what I said?
We enjoy
Oh,
PP.
my God.
Yeah, you got it.
Should I just leave now?
Maybe.
What do I do the rest of the show?
Oh man. I wish you had all been able to see
places.
Jordan Klein just lose it in the background. His eyes lit up like a Christmas tree.
Prize pick. I wanted to not say their name because this is No House Advantage, and we'll talk about props over there.
And you
I like Jamar Chase.
It.
I like Jalen Waddle over receptions 5.5. I like over for Jamar Chase all of his receiving yardage props. Oh dear God. Well,
it's just an easy segue from there. Yeah,
to Samaje P.P. Ryan. How about that?
Actually, that was pretty clever. Honestly, I think he's one of those sneaky players that I know Neil Orfield is going to be over the field on. Now, if we're talking No House Advantage bets and we're just talking median projections here, remember, DFS, we're shooting for ceiling projections or finding that ceiling potential. No House Advantage, we're betting props. We're looking at median projections. The under on Samaje P. Ryan's rushing yards looks like an absolute smash right now. And I know we've been smashing on all platforms with these backup running back unders for like 2 seasons now. Let's ride that wave as long as we can. To answer your question, he fell in the end zone on a passing play against the Jets. He could do it again tonight against the Miami defense that we already talked about having a little bit of liability, especially on the line. I like him in large field tournaments, to be honest.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's all right. I can like whoever I like, whatever I like. There you go.
Yeah. Well, Neil. Oh, thank you, Neil, chiming in to say he likes P. Ryan better on FanDuel, where touchdowns mean even more.
Yep. Because if he gets the touch, there you go, Yahtzee. But DK going to be hard for me to get to a whole heck of a lot of him there. I'm going to be higher on Mixon, and I have other guys that I'm going to be punting ridiculously with. How you doing, Asi? I like these PP Asi things. There's some alliteration there. There's something there. Anything else at the running back position you want to talk about at all? Is some Alec Ingold in your future?
Honestly, that is a player who they tried to get involved at the 1 yard line to the point where on a showdown slate, large field tournament, get him in your player pool, make sure he's in there. I saw a very valuable opportunity, nearly a touchdown last week. Could happen here soon.
Great, $1.99. Appreciate the super chat. Favorite contrarian captain for mid-size DK single entry. That's very specific. So I'm thinking 5,000 entries. We'll call that a mid because it's not 100K and it's not the 400 or 300. You might be playing a small field. We'll call it 5,000 people. Mm-hmm. Who would be your favorite captain to be getting to on DK?
Okay, I think a contrarian captain is playing the Cincy onslaught and going Evan McPherson.
And the captain?
I think this game has a possibility of having Cincinnati win by a significant margin and the game hitting under. And I don't think a lot of people are building for that lineup. I think you could include Mixon. You could include the Bengals defense in that kind of narrative. Again, we're trying to win first place. What happens when we get right? Trying to learn from you, Neil Orfield. What happens when we're right? This is not a game where people are expecting underperformances, especially on an overperforming Miami team. And what if both teams come out a little bit flat on short rest and Evan McPherson is needed much more than expected?
I was going to say Mitchell Wilcox.
Okay.
Because we're talking about like 600. Just give me the entire all-star team in my lineup. And again, this is for like a mid where we haven't seen this kind of build work out yet this season. And there's a lot of recency bias. Obviously, we just saw a kicker end up in the captain spot. and take down everything last slate. We've seen defenses go completely nuts. We've always seen tight ends go completely nuts. But for me, it's more of just finding somebody who's touchdown capable at the goal line, something where they can run, even like a Sherfield can maybe do it for you. But if you go all the way to the floor, just give me every single piece of the studs in this game. Give me Hill, give me Waddle, give me Chase, give me, I can almost get both quarterbacks. You're going to have to make some kind of a sacrifice in terms of one of the quarterbacks, but give me the absolute floor on a guy that I think will be involved at the goal line.
I dig it. Everyone just roasting us because we're trying to find ways to get unique in a showdown lineup. And so we're talking about low probability outcomes.
Super low probability.
These guys are idiots.
Well, he's saying like, what's a contrarian captain option? Alex Baker had always been talking on a lot of showdowns. It's like, you want to get the highest scoring captain. And I think that that's very, very valid. One of the difficult things is that then you got to find those flex pieces still that are going to be those contrarian pieces. So for like a 5,000 entry, you don't have to be perfect. Like you don't have to probably have the nuts more than likely. So I'll just get all of the, oh no, it's already on Twitter.
It's already, oh, we do love to see the internet. Jordan Klein, producer Jordan, hard at work.
Or hardly working.
He's
so red. This is the greatest day of his life. He's like, I knew that about Eric forever.
I just wish we had producer.
And now Stokastic hasn't posted. Why does my work hate me? What did I do to deserve this? Well, some people in chat hate me. It's whatever. Some people love me. Love me, or hate me. It's still an obsession. Love me, or hate me. That is the question. If you love me, then F you.
Is that quit playing your love games?
No, it's what's her face. Oh, but that's old Greg. That's a beautiful bit. I've never actually played out the old Greg. Want to go to a club where people wee on each other?
Oh my God. And chat's going, here he goes. He's singing again. Yeah.
Guys, it's a 45-minute show, and a lot of you just watched the same kind of analysis from the last one. Obviously, we're reacting to some inactives. We're having some fun here on a lovely Thursday evening, getting ready for some Amazon Prime football because the overlords have taken over. So there's that.
So, Tex, what are you talking about? I was right there with the bit. Right there. I was right there with the old Greg bit.
Are you playing their love games with me? Because I got to know.
All right, we got to talk about these receivers.
Let's get there in a second, because first, Stokastic Tools and Showdown. If you guys want all the Showdown stuff, this is your last day for prime time. Yes, if there's anything that you've enjoyed from this first ridiculous half hour for my life, click on the link below. Go to the video description box below. Click on the link that's there. Get prime time in your life. It is the last day to get Showdown lineup generator, player and ownership projections, expert Discord chat, lineup builder, and so much more on the daily. That Discord chat alone, being able to head in there, I've been frequenting those places a lot more frequently because there's some really sharp people talking around the clock there. Take advantage of this offer. Just $1. It's $1. Use prime time right now. Sign up. It's normally right around $9, $8.95, I believe. So take advantage. $1 prime time. Use it at checkout to get that NFL prime time package with everything that is lovely displayed on your screen. So take advantage. This is the last day. Let's get to receiver here. Of course, I'm back to serious, Eric. Ja'Marr Chase is the guy I want to talk about. He's the highest projected wide receiver. He's the most expensive wide receiver. But if you made me pick one guy for all the marbles that I had to play in a captain spot today, I'm going to pick Ja'Marr Chase because I think he absolutely nukes this slate. We're talking about a guy that leads his team in terms of air yards by a pretty hefty margin. And yes, he has T. Higgins. He has Tyler Boyd there. It doesn't matter. I think he goes completely nuts. He's had target share right around what? It's been outrageous. It's been outrageous for Ja'Marr Chase, and it hasn't shown up the way that we had gotten accustomed to last year, but a 28.5% target share, a 34.7% air yard share. Give me all of that you got in a bag of potato chips. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah. How about he's number 1 in the NFL in total targets? How about he's got 8 red zone targets, but only 2 touchdowns right now? That's 10th in the NFL, despite being 3rd in red zone targets. And you know he doesn't need to be in the red zone to score. I think this is the same high efficiency player who's just waiting to break out. One thing I will say in yards per route run, he does not look as efficient as last year, but I think that's a variance thing much more than it is the player changing their ability at all. They are number 6 already in unrealized air yards, meaning Joe Burrow is already trying to air it out. They're just not connecting right now. What if tonight's the night? At this point, this is an easy bet at captain. And then obviously, if you're using an optimizer, I'm probably locking in Burrow in those lineups as well. But I'm with you. High leverage captain. I really like him. Chances of having 30 points, it's Jamar Chase, it's Tyreek Hill, and then it's everybody else for me.
I am going to have some Jamar Chase without. I will say I'm going to have some without Joe Burrow as I'm going through some of my lineups and finishing everything up. There's no doubt that he'll be a part of my portfolio without Joe Burrow, but I think I'm with you where I'm more inclined to have them together, even though I know that that's going to be the preferred option that everybody in the field has. I'm going to have some Jamar Chase where I get to the defense on the other side for the Dolphins. And again, I'm not going to be playing a lot of defense, but I'm going to be very specific about the way that I utilize it in my builds. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I have a preference between the two, but I will let you go first.
I honestly am playing a lot of Bengals lineups, so I'm just choosing the ones that work for me, but I like Waddle in this spot a little bit more.
Me too.
I'm going to take the salary savings, and then I'm just using Tyreek Hill as a way to make my lineup a little bit different than my previous builds have been. I'm hand building tonight for the most part, but really Waddle's impressed me with getting a superstar wide receiver on his team, still maintaining an elite target share. He's 6th in the NFL in target share, 7th in air yard share, and he's only got 4 red zone targets, and he's still managed to turn it into 3 touchdowns. I think this is just a young emerging star who happens to just now have a great player on the opposite side.
All righty, we continue our way down the board. Tyreek Hill, you can obviously get to some Tyreek Hill too. I'm playing a little bit more Jalen Waddle. I do expect there to be, we already have an ownership gap between the two. It's not a ton, 5%, but Jalen Waddle with the amount of, it's been low ADOT in the past. It's going to expand under the new regime. I feel pretty confident that Jalen Waddle is somebody that you want to constantly be playing. I like the over 5.5 receptions for him today too, around the yard. That's the line over at No House Advantage. I definitely like that over, and that will be the direction I take. But now it gets really, really interesting. We have Tyler Boyd, we have T. Higgins, and these are just 3 wide receivers that end up on the field constantly for Cincinnati, Jamar Chase being the other one, obviously. But Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, who do you have a preference going towards? Because there is a massive ownership difference between these two.
I think I like Tyler Boyd considering salary savings. I think T. Higgins has a significantly higher ceiling, but I say that having seen Tyler Boyd just spin off a tackle last week and take a long play to the house. Honestly, both players project pretty darn well, but if you're looking at our projections, it's not even close. We have almost a 10-point difference. It's just, I think there's a little bit more ceiling potential than maybe our tools might indicate for Tyler Boyd. Are you going to say Higgins is a much preferred option?
No, I'm definitely not.
Really?
Tyler Boyd is sub 20% right now. He's 7K. And I mean, I will say, obviously, last week, a little bit of an outlier. You saw 23.5 from Tyler Boyd, but it almost feels as though people aren't point chasing. They're obviously seeing the same things we're seeing. T. Higgins is going to get all the opportunity, just like he did last season. But there hasn't been a crazy difference in their target share, like compared to previous seasons as well. I mean, 7 and 5 in 2 of the outings for Tyler Boyd. T. Higgins with 2 and 7 in 2 separate outings. If you throw away that Dallas game where he had 10 for T. Higgins, 10 targets, I feel like Tyler Boyd's going a little bit slept on in terms of where we've got their current ownership projected.
In route participation rate, Boyd is consistently up there with ahead of many teams' number 1 wide receivers. Yep. He is a every down on the field wide receiver because they play 3 wide receiver sets so often. And if we're seeing a significant ownership differential, it does sway me a little bit. The bottom line is in our median projections, we do have a huge difference, and we definitely need to say that T. Higgins has a clear advantage.
Yeah, Tyler Boyd, he that is correct. And Tyler Boyd's too expensive probably for a guy who has an 11% target share right now. But I will say, again, you throw away the Dallas game, and we're 3 games into this season. He still ran a route on 86% of dropbacks. So Tyler Boyd's somebody that I definitely am looking at, is that I want to just get over the field to, because you can run into those type of situations like last week where, yeah, he's half the ownership. That's really all I need to know. He's half the ownership.
The game theory makes all the sense in the world because he's still in the same game environment and has a decently high ceiling. Absolutely.
All right. Well, now there's no Cedric Wilson out there for Miami, my friend, and you get the honor. Is it River Craycraft or Trent Sherfield season? Best of luck to you.
I feel like it is Sherfield season, if only because I heard his name first on TV last year. No, I'm joking. I think that Sherfield, what did he play 61% of snaps last week?
Sure did.
Okay, I mean, that's enough for me. Ran 17 routes, only saw 1 target, but we're grasping at straws at this point. He's cheap. He's $1,400 on DraftKings. It's a great what the heck flex if he's someone that fits and you're going with that build. As I said, that is not the main narrative that I'm building while hand building tonight, but I do think that Trent Sherfield has touchdown equity. He can get in the end zone, and yeah. What do we have him projected for? About 5 points on DraftKings?
Yep.
You could do worse.
You could do worse. You could do better. You could do worse. That's for sure. Low probability play, but that's what you got to be doing in some of these showdowns. 5.72, pretty decent projection here at Stokastic. So I'm all right with it. Some River Craycraft is showing up because I'm playing in the bigger tournaments, on FanDuel, DK, finding my way to a little bit, but not going to be playing some inordinate amount of them. And on the last guy to really discuss, Mike Thomas. Any of him for you from the Cincinnati side before we move along?
That's a little too thin for me.
Yeah, me too. You have 3 wide receivers that, unless there's an injury that opens up, he did see 5 targets in week 1, but since then, really not seeing the field. He was inactive. But no, he wasn't inactive. He just didn't play. That's cool.
Yeah, that's not good. What, 11% snap share? We're really grasping.
Yeah,
now.
he played, but he didn't play, if you know what I mean.
There's no reason when the salary is just a little bit different to go that thin. You're essentially asking yourself for a 0.
He had a 1%. He saw 1 snap in week 2, 9 in week 3. It's just such a low probability play. I'd rather take shots on the tight end position, which we will get to next, as long as you don't have anything else here from the wide receiver spot.
No, I think we covered it. I do have some River Craycraft. I just like Sherfield better.
All right. Got to head out. All right. Bye, Randall. Sean Preston. Good to see everybody. It's nice to see some of the familiar folks. Sometimes baseball season, you never know who you're going to run into coming out of that into the NFL season. Loves to see all of you guys. And I would love to see all of you guys playing over at No House Advantage right now, where there is massive overlay yet again today. We're talking less than 1,200 people signed up for the $15 $15K to first Thursday night football showdown. You want to be signing up. You need to be signing up, and you need to do it right now using all of the great codes and options that you have from us over here. You can get a $50. It's up to $50 now for a first match deposit bonus when you sign up at the link below. That is going to be Stokastic for the promo code. So take advantage of that for sure. But that is a massive extra bit, getting an extra $25 there. So you put $50 in, you'll get 50 back, $100. That's going to get you 6 entries into that $15 tonight. So look at me doing math on the fly. I have some capabilities. Not enough to get 7, but there you go. Cool. Put $55 in, you'll get 7 entries. More math, but No House Advantage. This is where you want to sign up and be playing consistently. It is the best spot for props across the entire industry because it's peer-to-peer. I don't have to play props against the house. I don't have to play props against anybody other than my peers. And that means that there's going to be human error in there a little bit, especially if they're not using the stochastic projections in order to get themselves there. I'm going to ask you once again, we're putting together a little bit of a card here on the fly, but Jalen Waddle, I love the over of 5.5 receptions. As long as he was active, I was always going to go that direction. Is there any other prop other than the Samaje Perine that you so eloquently put out there, under of 19.5 rushing yards? Is there anything else that stands out to you on the No House Advantage board for tonight?
I would go under with these Dolphins receivers. Again, playing to the idea that the Cincinnati Bengals are a little bit underrated as a secondary and as a defense overall. If we're looking at percentages, I think I actually want to take Tyreek Hill under. I think his line's at 80.5, and we got that hitting the under about 60% of the time.
Yeah, I think that sounds pretty good. Let's put that up there as well into one of the higher confidence spots. So you basically play just like you would in a DFS lineup. You have 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're going to play 7 different roster spots. You simply go over or under the projection that we're talking about, and you win money. Those props do not change throughout the day. So while at a traditional book, you might see things go up and down constantly, that doesn't change over at No House Advantage. You can run into some really good values. I don't think Cedric Wilson was on the page. Good. Okay. Just wanted to double check, because if you play anybody who's inactive, you're going to get a 0 for that. So do not do that ever. But No House Advantage, thank you so much to them for being our sponsor of this lovely program that we have put together. It is so much fun playing over there, and I think you'll enjoy it as well. Let's go to the tight end position here as we're getting closer to lock. What is it? 15. We're just inside of 15 minutes, 15 minutes on the clock. And the tight end position is pretty dusty, but you get the opportunity to get some touchdown equity in a guy like Hayden Hurst, Mike Gesicki, Durham Smythe, I talked about a little bit as well, Mitchell Wilcox, if you want to jam in all the studs. How are you feeling about the tight end position overall?
I actually kind of like Hayden Hurst on this slate. Not just touchdown equity for me today. You know, he's number 6 among all tight ends in routes run, number 11 in total targets, number 10 in red zone targets. I mean, he's a viable main slate tight end. And obviously, he's got the positive correlation factor where he plays on a team with superstar wide receivers and a quarterback who can blow a slate wide open. So I actually do really like Hayden Hurst. Decent salary today, $5,400, and I do have a couple spots with him as captain. Obviously, you probably need him to fall in the end zone twice. You still need touchdowns from tight ends for them to hit, but I don't mind it. He's actually underperformed compared to his expected fantasy points per game, so maybe he turns that around this week.
Can't remember where I saw that graph. It was on Twitter somewhere where they were talking about a lot of the expected fantasy points and where they fell on the bar graph. It was a really cool thing to be checking out over on the Twitters. I probably favorited it if you want to go to @Eric Lindquist and take a look there. But he was definitely somebody who was on the lower end of the spectrum. And so I do like that shout out as we're talking about him. The other guys, like the Miami side, obviously, Mike Gesicki, other than the Baltimore week 2 blow up fest where he had that touchdown catch, not really doing enough for me. It's difficult. I feel like name recognition might get him up a little bit higher than he should be. Right now, we've got him projected for 8.3%. If that maintained, I would definitely want to get there. Overpriced at $5K, but such is life. For me, give me the Durham Smythe, Mitchell Wilcox complete punts, trying to make something out of nothing there. Mainly because with the absence of Cedric Wilson, would it surprise you if a tight end had ended up running a little bit more or running some more routes or having more opportunity? It wouldn't surprise me. I can't imagine that River Craycraft or Trent Sherfield are actual massive parts of that offense. Trent Sherfield, I do like our projection for him. I'm going to get to a little bit more as I'm finishing it up, but any specific preference? Because, I mean, it just feels like they're the same guy getting to Wilcox for the Bengals or Durham Smythe there, 2,800.
I mean, Gesicki is okay in the sense that he's athletic and he's on the field with a team that's better this year. I don't particularly like him at his salary today. And, you know, it's funny. This keeps coming up in the chat, too. These up 7 bets, people betting Miami up 7. Yeah. People loving that. It's if they at any point are ahead by 7 or if they win the game. People really like that. If you're building with that kind of narrative in mind, playing a tight end to catch more and be more productive than the projection implies is probably a nice way to play this. Gesicki at 7,500. It's not bad. I actually do think your call on Smythe is also a pretty decent one, especially with the way that we've seen the San Francisco effect of the running game happen in Miami as well.
Yeah, I'm going to smite my opposition with Smythe or something like that. That wasn't funny either. Nothing I've said is funny today. I'm not enjoying it. I'll be okay. I'll recover. Right. Oh, we will be okay. We're going to go over to the kicker and defenses in 1 second. But first, we've got over 2,000 of you guys hanging out. Hit the like button. It is lovely to see all of your faces. And one place I want to see all of you is on the Stokastic Hall of Fame. Simply download the Stokastic avatar at stokastic.com/avatar. Place in the top 3 of any contest with over 5,000 contestants. Tweet those wins to @StokasticHOF, and you're going to get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. I love seeing the screenshots throughout the season, throughout this entire NFL season. We had so many through baseball. I mean, a lot of them people who work here. It was an unbelievable MLB season, but NFL is off to a hot start too. And you guys just take advantage of this right now. Go download that avatar now. We've got Eddie Lai. Come on, man. 20K is like chump change for Eddie Lai at this point in time. The guy just went completely nuts throughout all of MLB season. Multiple 100K wins, multiple 20K wins. Good stuff. But these are the ones I really like to see. I like seeing the quarter jukebox hitting an NFL Showdown for $500. I mean, I don't even know if that was split. More than likely not. $500 on a 10K quarter jukebox. Love seeing that. So congratulations to Joni Tiller. We've got Nolan Kelly. Look at that.
Oh, look who it is.
Our boss man himself. Nolan Kelly used the week 3 NFL DFS main slate projections for a little rainmaker money. Ooh, hashtag how rich. How about that? Stokastic HOF works for the employees here too. And then what is this last one? I can't see his name on the screen. Completely beautiful stuff, though. I mean, that's a nice hit as well. $96.25, tied with 53 of his friends there in the 25-cent showdown. 25 into almost $100. Love seeing that. And lastly, Vin, look at that. The wiffle ball. Wiffle ball was fun as a kid. It's even more fun as an adult playing FanDuel. Look at that. $400 wiffle ball event, $15. Got a first place there. Doesn't matter if it's over 5,000 people, get that free month. That is a massive value and an opportunity you cannot pass up. All right, we're getting close. We're getting close, my friend. We go to the kicker position. Evan McPherson, Jason Sanders. They're parts of my builds because, again, a game that you might expect to have a little bit more scoring. Sounds good to me. The boss man loves them. That's good enough for me as well. He's been notoriously high on kickers in the past. A little bit higher projection on the home team that has the higher team total. Makes sense to me. Anything that stands out to you with kickers?
I mean, isn't Evan McPherson the clutchest kicker alive?
Might
be. Justin Tucker has a little bit to say about that, but no, maybe. I mean, all the DFS fundamentals point us to Evan McPherson actually being a pretty decent play today. I could say the same things I say about kickers on every single showdown slate, which is high floor, traditionally low ceiling options. But as you were talking about before, it's also a situation where we've kind of try to push the envelope and see situations where kickers can actually find their way in the optimal lineup. And Alex Baker has been at the forefront of that. I talked about it being a contrarian option in a mid-sized tournament. Not that that's my absolute favorite captain play by any stretch, but in a 48.5 total game, you're going to play the home kicker, especially one on a favorite team. And I believe McPherson is good. That's really all we can do with kickers.
Yep. He's very, very good. We go to defense. This is a spot that has just been torturing me of late. I feel as though I'm taking crazy pills because defense is just never something that I want to get to a lot of when it ends up popular. This might be the first slate in quite a while on these island games where we don't have crazy popular defenses, a 30, 35% defense that somehow finds a path to 11 and 12 and being optimal. It's just been head scratching to me. I'm almost always a little bit lower on defense. Today, though, seeing Cincinnati at around 10.6%, that is intriguing. And I'm pairing a lot of him with Jamar Chase. Yes, you heard me correctly. Jamar Chase in the captain spot where it's like a come from behind mode and maybe you get a pick six or something where Joe Burrow has to air it out a little bit more, a la to what Tua did in week 2 against Baltimore. How are you feeling about defenses, the all-important defense spot on this slate?
Well, I really hope the rest of our lineup is different because I have lineups built exactly that same way, where Jamar Chase goes off in the first half, the defense cleans up on some Tua Tagovailoa mistakes in the second half. Exactly what I'm seeing as well, Eric. It's just a situation where I think the Bengals defense might be a little undervalued and a little underrated, and their ceiling potential in a one-game slate is as good as any as a home favorite. We already talked about at length about how their metrics look a little bit better than we all expected. I just looked at their defensive DVOA, 7th overall this season. I'll take it with this Bengals defense, especially considering they are low owned. Number 8 in pass DVOA, number 9 in rush DVOA. They might be legit.
Yeah, by the way, I was putting in my FanDuel lineups and finishing that up. So when I referenced those ownerships, Bengals are a lot lower on FanDuel, which is weird to me because they're 8,500 and the Dolphins are getting 6% more ownership. That's pretty surprising to me, but maybe that's just a result of people wanting to use up all their salary the way that they probably shouldn't on a site like FanDuel here.
Yeah, but even looking at DraftKings, I'm seeing a positive leverage score for even when you split it out for captain and non-captain, both defenses essentially, wherever you play them, have positive leverage scores today.
God, Evan McPherson, the most positively leveraged play on DraftKings today. Just wanted to give him another shout out there as a kicker. 9.5% of leverage in the tools. That is lovely. Please, one-time dealer, one time. Also, lots of positive leverage playing utility captain Burrow and Tagovailoa. That is not what I expected on any slate.
Wait, utility Burrow and captain Tagovailoa is what there is popping a ton. Interesting.
No, they're positively leveraged. How many times do you ever get
playing them enough?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at.
That is rare.
Pretty wild. Oh my God, more spam. Spam for everybody. It's brutal. All right, we got 5 minutes left here. You got all your lineups in, I'm assuming. I just finished up some stuff that I just wanted to talk through because again, I'm building my lineups along with my friend Matt Savoca over there because he's sharp and I trust his analysis. And I want to talk through some of our spots every single day on these shows, the same way that you guys tune in here and hang out with us. But anything that you really want to bring up here as we get closer to lock?
I think both offensive lines have been better than expected. I think both passing games have been at least good or better in Miami's case than expected. As I've been kind of getting at this entire time, and I want to reiterate, is just one way to see this slate. I think the big difference right now is the way that Cincinnati's defense has played against its opponents compared to Miami. Got to remember, Miami was in a ferocious comeback mode in the second half against Baltimore because it was giving up chunk play after chunk play after chunk play to the Baltimore Ravens, obviously, who are also a good offense. No doubt an impressive performance last week against the Bills, who basically proved that the Dolphins can hang with anyone. But ultimately, I think that the Bengals stomping the Dolphins is one of the ways to play lineups differently than a lot of people expect this to go tonight.
Yeah, one of the things for me that I want to bring up. So when we use the tools, you have captain ownership right now, 10.5% captain ownership on Joe Mixon, 7.8% captain optimal. That's one thing if you're looking at it and saying, oh, well, he's negatively leveraged. But for me, the nice thing about playing Joe Mixon at the captain spot is that I'm going to be leaving a lot of salary on the table and hopefully avoiding more duplication than I would by playing Tua Tagovailoa up there, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, who I think is like the one captain to rule them all, but definitely Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I am going towards the Joe Mixon side of it and just leaving those extra $1,000 to $3,000 on the table. Hopefully that gets me a little bit less duplication in long term. I think that's a very important part of playing Showdown and something that maybe I don't talk about enough on these shows. I think it's always fun to, hold hands with 100 people and win a bunch of money, but long term, when you win those big ones, you want to try to avoid as much duplication as possible because your ROI is just going to go up long term. It's math.
It's math, period. That's the because I said so of DFS.
Yeah. If
it's math.
If it weren't for just getting unlucky, I would win everything all the time. Let me just double check and make sure I got all my lineups in here. I'm double checking. Yep, I do. Everything looks good on my end. Hopefully it looks good on your end here too. If you had to pick one touchdown, well, before we do the scoring of the game, pick one touchdown guaranteed, no doubt about it in your lineups today.
One touchdown guaranteed?
Mm-hmm.
Jamar Chase.
Hayden Hurst or Trent Sherfield for me.
You're guaranteeing it?
No, I'm saying I'm not guaranteeing it. If I had to pick one touchdown, I want the guys that I have the most of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I misunderstood the
way
game.
Overweight too. See, it was okay. It was the first time.
Hayden Hurst would be great. We'll take that.
Hayden Hurst would be a lot of fun today.
Yeah.
That'd be a lot of fun. That would be like make it rain on them, I can't sing. I can't do any more bits. I'm very over it. Give me the final score of the game here, my friend. We are 2 minutes away from kickoff.
I'm going under. I think it's going to be 24-17. Yep. Yeah, 24-17. Bengals.
You understand last time that we played this game, you got the exact score and the exact outcome correct?
That's
can't remember what it was.
Probably nowhere to go but down is how I feel now.
If I had to guess, yeah, but if you guys wanted to bet 25-1 or something, whatever the number is going to be on, because 24-17, that's a nice round number. Just for sake of being different, I'll say 24-20. The people push everywhere on 4, 3.5. The hook comes into play, and the Bengals just barely cover on those 3.5s. But I mean, why the public is just all over this? I can't believe it.
Hey, and Nick Lepre might not even show up to work tomorrow if Miami wins this one, because he's already delusional. He's just going to have a head the size of the state of Delaware.
Waddle. As long as he plays well, I'll be okay. Guys, that does it for us here on the NFL Live Before Lock show. Make sure you follow at Draftaholic over on Twitter. That's Matt Savoca. Go follow me at Eric Lindquist. Thank you to Jordan Klein for producing the show. He did an okay job at times. Probably got scolded. That tweet disappeared. So there's that. Anyway, I'm very excited about what's to come here over the weekend. Lots of NFL coverage. Make sure you're tuning in Friday, Saturday, and then I'll be back with another Matt as well on NFL Live Before Lock on Sunday. Until then, I'm Eric Lindquist. Best of luck in the NFL streets tonight.
Thanks for 80K.